Oh.
Well, John, I will give a little intro. I'm a little better prepared this time around than I was last time. But we'll just wait because I don't really have a sense for how many folks will be coming on.
I can see perhaps how many accepted.
Oh, that would be helpful.
Oop, I already messed up. I was trying to send Robin a little private message. Hi, Robin. I haven't seen Robin in a long time, but I just sent it to everybody. So hi, everybody. I don't want to play favorites.
I think we should have, we have about 16 either accepted or tentatively accepted.
Okay.
There's 9 on, which makes for a nice little Brady bunch.
It does.
One of these days, I got to get that thing that Miss Sally had, you know, I see, and or whatever her name was in Romper Room, where she's like, I can see.
Oh, right. Totally. Well, let's see. Let's give it a couple more minutes just to make sure. I love the fact that we're recording this, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good to have it. Yeah, it might even be a couple more. I think I missed a few there, so it could be up to 20, including the tentatively folks.
Well, for those of you who are on, since we've got a couple minutes, you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
That would be great. And maybe if as you're doing that, you could give us a little bit, like, are you completely new to the AKN? Are you kind of new to the AKN?
Good idea.
I'll kick off. You guys know me, but I'm Elroy Masters. I'm the acting program lead. I'm somewhat familiar with the AKNs through the Borderlands node efforts through this joint venture.
Well, I'll go next. This is Kelly Van Norman, Oregon, Washington, BLM State Office. And I did attend that earlier AKN for some of the Southeast Oregon folks. So have had a little bit of familiarity from that. And I figured that repetition is good.
Thanks, Kelly. And this one's going to be a little, you know, so we've done, this one's going to be a little different than what we did. It's not going to focus as much on IMBCR, and it's going to be a bit more about the broad overview. So that'll be less repetitive, I think, for those folks.
How about Emily?
Give me a second. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a recently hired biotech out of Palm Springs, and I do bird surveys, and I'm hoping to do something with that information. That's all I got.
Thanks, Emily. Welcome. How about Jake?
Yeah, hi everyone. My camera's not functional right now, but I'm a wildlife biologist for the BLM in the Central Oregon Field Office, and I've spent a few survey seasons with the Rocky Mountain Bird Observatory, now Bird Conservancy of the Rockies with the IMBCR surveys. So, yeah,
Nice.
nice to meet you all.
Welcome. How about Evan?
Yeah, I'm Evan with Bishop BLM in California. And I honestly don't know much about this organization or the program. I got the invite from our state lead, so I was hoping to find out more. As far as bird work out here, I mostly deal with sage grouse, so not too much songbirds, although I've done a lot of songbird surveys up in Alaska for some of their off-road population mapping. So just here to see what it's all about.
Nice, welcome.
Great.
How about Dave?
Hi, my name is Dave Cook. I'm the Utah program lead for wildlife, and I've heard of AKN and I'm a little familiar with it, but I've never used it and looking forward to it. We would like to try and get all our state biologists using it.
Thank you, Dave. How about Robin? Oh, we can't hear you. It looks like you're off mute, but we can't hear you. It's a snafu with the going back and forth between Teams and Zoom.
Well, Robin's been hearing about me talk about the AKN for decades.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's see. What about Stephanie?
We can't hear you now, Renee.
Stephanie, we're just introducing ourselves. Really quick intro. What your exposure to AKN or the Avian Knowledge Network is, and that's it.
Hi, I'm a wildlife biologist with the BLM out of Medford, and I have used some of the information online through the Avian Knowledge Network to inform some of the background info in our EAs to know what species are present where and what effects some actions might have. So I'm interested in learning more about how to use that.
Well, that's wonderful, Stephanie. We're going to want to hear more about how it worked and didn't work from you too. That's going to be a big part of these next steps. So thank you.
Let's see. We've got a couple others. Sarah.
Yes, I didn't hear the first part. Are we just doing introductions right now?
Yeah, just short introductions and your exposure to AKN or familiarity.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Sarah Bullock. I am supervisor wildlife biologist here at the Bakersfield Field Office. Was previously acting California BLM T&E wildlife program lead, but now I'm kind of back in my old role. So I don't have any experience with the Avian Knowledge Network. So I'm very interested in learning more about it and how we could possibly use it here on either with projects or with analysis, or as I learn more about what it is, what I can use it for. So yeah.
Nice, thank you, Sarah. And then Karen, I think you're the last one. And if you're having issues with the audio, that's okay too. I know sometimes it's tricky as we switch back and forth between Teams and Zoom. I see your mute button coming on and off. Well, maybe if you want to type.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I don't have any experience with this either, so it's new for me.
And where are you from, Karen?
I'm in Eugene, Oregon, at the BLM office in Springfield.
Excellent.
Great. Well, I don't think we're going to be getting any other folks. Just so you know, we are recording this, and this is great to kind of follow up with the year of training that's been going on with the Bio 101 training sessions, and just trying to roll out information to let folks know what kinds of tools are in development that may be useful when you're in the field. My name is Renee Chi, and I'm new to the headquarters biologist team. somewhat fulfilling Jeff Walsh's role and his migratory bird responsibilities. And so prior to his leaving, he was working with Klamath Bird Observatory, John Alexander and Kate Halstead, to develop some trainings and then give some trainings to help folks get a better understanding of what the Avian Knowledge Network is all about. And this session is primarily an introductory type training, kind of part one, if you will. And then hopefully at the end of the summer, we'll aim to kind of get into the weeds a little bit more with a part two. But again, having this recorded is really valuable because it's a lot of information, and each time I watch one of these, I learn something new. So I'm still kind of getting up to pace with learning more about AKN as well. But I really appreciate John and Kate providing this training and working with us to help us see how we can use this tool to do our jobs a little bit better in the field. That's it. I'll hand it over.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is John Alexander. I'm the Executive Director of Klamath Bird Observatory, and I've been a part of the Avian Knowledge Network since its inception, and even in some iterations that were pre-AKN, something that's now a data center, the California Avian Data Center. And the AKN has been of interest to me for two reasons in what we do at the Klamath Bird Observatory. One, because it provides a data management solution for us, which we're clearly need. And I can estimate that we've saved significant amounts of dollars pooling resources with agencies and other NGOs to come up with this, this user platform to meet data management solutions for us, as opposed to going at it on our own with our own independent informatics program. And really being able to leverage the investment that Point Blue Conservation Science, formerly known as the Point Reyes Bird Observatory, have made in their science cloud. And helping to contribute to their efforts, as opposed to just try to go alone. The other reason, and we're going to get into both of this, that the Avian Knowledge Network is incredibly important to me, is because our mission to advance bird and habitat through science education and partnerships is all about science delivery, partner-driven monitoring to create data-rich, science-rich decision support systems that we can use with our partners like the BLM. And we have some great success stories out of Medford BLM. So it's great to see Robin and others here, and working with the Oregon Washington BLM for years and years to develop these too. So thank you, Kelly, to develop tools that help you all do your jobs, and to even work together with you all to bring bird conservation even more into kind of the adaptive management approach through not only kind of the NEPA process, but also the process of just designing forest restoration projects, and then learning from what we see and adapting and informing and changing and ever improving. So to me, that's why this is exciting. That's why I'm in the game. I'll let Kate introduce herself a little more, but Kate's been a research biologist with us for many, many years, on and off, while she was getting degrees and doing other things, important life things. And so we're thrilled to have Kate Halstead helping us with this effort.
Hi, well, John sort of already introduced me, but I'm Kate Halstead. Yeah, I've been with KBO, like John said, on and off, I think since 2008. And yeah, I am relatively new to this side, I suppose, of working with AKN, though I've in the past definitely been very involved more in the data collection effort. So it's been really wonderful to work with everyone outside of the organization who is trying to learn how to make better use of this, and see the tools that we've been able to offer just grow and expand in their abilities. And yeah, it's just wonderful working with all of you guys. And looking forward to more of that in the future.
Great. So we'll get started. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen and maximize. Ready to roll. So if I can get y'all out of my way. Okay, fantastic. So this is going to be a whirlwind tour of the Avian Knowledge Network. And what we really are looking to do is give you guys an overview, maybe even an overwhelming overview. And the idea is after this presentation, we're going to move into a second phase of this project that we're working on, which is going to be developing some smaller training modules that are maybe a little more specific and a little more applied to specific challenges and opportunities that we can find at the BLM for using the Avian Knowledge Network. Again, either as a data management solution and or as a decision support system to support project planning and evaluation. So bear with me, because this is going to be the big, here's everything to kind of give you guys some ideas of what might we want to drill into with regards to some more specific, possibly slower paced training modules that we're going to put together for the BLM. So we're going to do an AKN 101. I'm going to give you a run through the basic framework of the Avian Knowledge Network, and then I'm going to show you some applications that we believe are BLM relevant, and eventually we're going to seek your input on that too. I'm also new to this presentation, going to present some information that Kate came up with. Part of our agreement with the BLM was we were going to look at the trainings that are in place at the Avian Knowledge Network, kind of do an evaluation of those and a gap analysis of those so we could move into next steps. What are some specific BLM relevant trainings that we want to put together to kind of dig in to some of these applications and slow down a little bit, as opposed to just throwing you guys the whole kitchen sink every time we come to talk to you. My interdisciplinary research approach includes a social science approach called participatory action research. It's what we use to work with agencies and natural resource management decision makers to develop decision support tools that are relevant to the work that you guys do, and to develop science programs, data collection frameworks that are relevant to the work that you do. I'll talk a little bit about that because that's core to the way we develop training. And then our idea is next steps is to possibly come up with some use cases. So really, this is the idea. We started talking to the national folks. We've done some conversations with the state folks. And what we really want to do is help to build capacity in the BLM so the state folks and the resource area folks or the district folks can work together to build your capacity to best take advantage of the Avian Knowledge Network, something that the BLM has invested significantly in. And then we'll leave some time for discussion about how to get those next steps rolling. So the Avian Knowledge Network, our vision, a world where bird populations thrive through conservation and management informed by a network of avian knowledge. And to achieve this vision, the Avian Knowledge Network supports a network of people, data, and technologies to improve bird conservation management and research across organizational boundaries and across spatial scales. Our AKN community is comprised of a variety of individuals ranging from citizen scientists to conservation biologists, computer programmers, non-government organizations, state and federal agencies, and private corporations and businesses. And our community ranges from the people who want to take advantage of the AKN data management solutions, those who wish to contribute their data for the greater cause of bird conservation, and researchers requesting larger data sets for analysis, and importantly, decision makers who want to use the best available bird science in their daily work. And through the contributions of this community, we operate a sustainable, collaborative-based model that includes nonprofit organization fundraising, government cooperative agreements, and contributions of data and information, all coalescing into a diversified, cost-share driven collaboration. The AKN partnership with over 100 organizations involved is our greatest strength. The AKN is built to handle a variety of field methodologies or protocols, ranging from area searches, checklists, point counts, callback surveys, and even aerial surveys. We continue to expand our data schema and protocol library as more users join our system. And we're also able to manage discrete databases for site conditions, such as weather and vegetation data. And all of this is built on a platform of common data schemas and metadata standards, which enable for customized data entry interfaces and automated QA/QC processes. Thanks to the talented programming staff from our web technology providers, including the Point Blue, Bird Studies Canada, Cornell, and Bird Conservancy of the Rockies folks, we are able to preserve data and metadata as technologies change. Our staff move on from positions. We're also dedicated to making data sets discoverable, ensuring the widest and most appropriate use possible, while also developing customized applications for the delivery of relevant information and that targets our most pressing conservation challenges and decisions. Our tools automate data summaries and are designed to meet annual reporting needs or education and outreach among partner organizations. I think I just want to pause here real quick on the data loss aspect. One of the things that motivated the AKN was some research that came out that said the half-life of data is 7 years. Every 7 years we lose data, whether that be because someone, let's say in an office, did a wonderful bird survey for 10 years and then moved on and it was left in a drawer or on floppy disks that now our computers that don't even read compact disks can't even read. Graduate students who collect data on a variety of species, but then focus their masters or dissertations on single species, and then what happens to those data sets. And then there's several examples of some federal data sets that the Avian Knowledge Network has been able to preserve and save as funding resources were shifted. The point count database, the secretive marsh bird database is an example. We just expanded the Avian Knowledge Network to collect 100 years of colonial water bird data from the Atlantic flyway. So there's all these different data that are out there that are valuable and can help us answer data. And so we came up back then, and this will date ourselves with the a kind of a sub motto: no data left behind. So I'm going to start by talking about the data architecture of the Avian Knowledge Network. As I mentioned, the Avian Knowledge Network is designed to both meet data management solutions, provide data management solutions and meet data management needs, but then also it's designed to serve as an interactive decision support system to support natural resource management and bird conservation. And so this first section really gets to the data user, the data owner, and how they can use the system, the project database or the transactional database, we call it. So you can see our depiction here of a project leader and the project leader's staff who go collect data and want to bring data into the Avian Knowledge Network through data entry tools, through bulk uploading tools. Once the data are in the Avian Knowledge Network, they reside in this projects database or transactional database. And this is a relational database that includes tables of events. Where were you and what did you do? During those events, what did you observe? Who observed that? Capturing all of the important metadata. What were your questions? What was your design? All of that information that you would want to collect and preserve, preferably in an ad hoc way when you're developing a project and beginning to collect data. Important to the Avian Knowledge Network is the data owner and access control. The data owners control access to their data in all different places of the Avian Knowledge Network, and that is data driven. So we closely pay attention to data security through a system of sharing levels and user agreements and owner controlled access. For example, if you're the leader of a project, you can get access to all the data in that project regardless of data sharing. But if you're an unidentified member of the public visiting the AKN website, your access may be limited to specific summarized views of the data or be entirely restricted based upon the data sharing levels assigned to each and every record in the Avian Knowledge Network. So here you have the user and they interface with their data. This is the data management part. Data entry, QA, QC, set data sharing levels, and determine where the data then can go. The data then are pushed from this transactional database into warehouses. And the warehouses are designed for two purposes. The warehouses are designed to provide summary and analyst tools to the data owners and their team. So you can still see we're still within the realm of the data owner. So there's project leader tools that you can use to establish sampling units, to edit data, to set user controls. And then there's analyst tools that you can use to create summary reports that you could put into some of your reporting needs and other things like that based on these discrete data sets that occur in the Avian Knowledge Network. And the data owner can provide access at a user level control. So with a username and password, we could provide access. So for example, when we collect IMBCR data for the BLM, if the BLM biologists that we're working with want access to those raw data and the analyst tools so they can use those data to do some basic summaries and data analyses, we can provide that access to them. It's important to note that you can't just make analysis tools that work for everything and everybody. So these really are intended to be general analysis tools to give you an idea of what the data have. And to be able to be useful in basic reporting. If you're going to be doing anything like publishing or in other kinds of things like that, it's through these tools you could also download the data and actually control the analysis environment that you're in, as opposed to using black box analyses. Now, these black box analyses do have full methodologies documented for them. So they're not complete black boxes. So again, we're in this data management, data user, data summary, data analysis environment. Excitingly, and we've made great advances through the Council for Migratory Birds, of which the BLM is a part of, investment in the Federal Avian Data Center, in creating a second set of tools, a second level of data access that's more public in nature. Some of it still is password protected, where the data are again pushed through the warehouses down into environments that can be entered by the public or by another set of designated audiences, depending on the tool. Different summaries, graphs, reports, maps, interactive maps, decision support systems, data sourcing tools. For example, the Avian Knowledge Network pushing data to other data tools such as IPAC, which we'll get into a little bit, different kind of decision support tools and things like that. So there's kind of the entire data schema and management framework. Down here is really the decision support tool area. How can we develop tools to help different audiences, whether it be BLM, the Department of Defense, meet their information needs, whether they be reporting needs, analysis needs, evaluation needs, and whatnot. The data sharing levels, I want to just get into that a little bit more. The project leader in the project view has full access always to their observations. They enter their data, they bulk upload their data, and they move their data from a state of being raw to a state of being clean using the QA/QC processes. And then they decide whether their data are completely restricted and visible, whether the metadata of their data show up in our a metadata library, or the catalog, we call it, where you can go search all data sets in the Avian Knowledge Network, whether the data available, some of the summary tools I'm going to show you, whether the data can be shared with permission, or whether the data are openly available and anyone can go download the raw data at will. And so this is an example of the data sharing levels that we work with currently at the Avian Knowledge Network. One of the things that we would like to clarify with the Avian Knowledge Network is what is a node, the Avian Knowledge Network node. So the node simply is an audience-specific view into the Avian Knowledge Network and access to tools in the Avian Knowledge Network. And in many circumstances, maybe also a system that provides other kinds of information. Some nodes are regional in character. The Midwest Avian Data Center, the Avian Knowledge Northwest, which is the data center that we operate, the Borderlands node somebody mentioned, that's the partnership is coordinated by the Sonoran joint venture. Excuse me. Hopefully we can cut that out of the recording. There's others that are taxa focused. The integrated waterbird monitoring program that's led by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And other things like that. The Pacific Flyway Shorebird Survey is another node of the Avian Knowledge Network. And so these different nodes are very audience specific. So for example, Avian Knowledge Northwest takes on other needs, such as the Avian Knowledge Northwest houses all of the Oregon, Washington Partners in Flight bird conservation plans and other kinds of decision support tools that might not be interactive AKN decision support tools, but that we think are relevant to our audiences here in the Pacific Northwest. So those are some examples of the regional nodes. So think about the nodes as an entry point into the cloud technologies. And in this example, Point Blue Conservation Sciences cloud technologies. So you can go into any node and access the different tools that allow you to manage the data. It doesn't matter whether I go through the Borderlands nodes or the Federal Avian Data Center or Avian Knowledge Network if I'm going to enter data or going to extract data or use my tools, because I'm entering the clouds, the science cloud of Point Blue with a username and password and using those tools and technologies that are in that node. So again, the data centers just are your entryway into those. There are several science clouds associated with the Avian Knowledge Network. Bird Conservancy of the Rockies houses the IMBCR data in a separate cloud. And currently, data can transfer back and forth from these different clouds. And one of the things I don't think I'm getting into much today, but we did talk about with Oregon BLM, is how Avian Knowledge Northwest and the Klamath Bird Observatory with our IMBCR work, we're sending data, our point count data, so they are together with our other 25 years of point count data, also collected in collaboration with the BLM in the Point Blue Science Cloud. So we have one cohesive point count data set for our region, but then those data are transferred to Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, so they're also available through the IMBCR tools and back and forth in these different ways through the nodes to the science clouds and back and forth from the science clouds. These are some technologies we continue to work on. So right now these lines are dotted, meaning the data are going in both directions, but we want to make those connections a little more solid and a little more real time as we continue to develop and advance. Just to dig in a little bit to Avian Knowledge Northwest, the node, as I mentioned, each node is a little different. Some of the nodes have different tools. So one of the things I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you some tools that are national in scale, some tools that are regional in scale. And one of the things that's exciting about the Avian Knowledge Network is we really encourage people to do everything in open source platforms. So if somebody likes the conservation priority mapping that we have for the Pacific Northwest, it would be easy for us to transfer those technologies if there's data and analyses available in other parts of the country. As I mentioned, the Avian Knowledge Northwest node also focuses on different kinds of decision support tools, not just interactive maps, but also different kinds of science summaries and other things like that. We have our own multi-map that allows you to explore data from the Pacific Northwest. And unique to the Avian Knowledge Northwest node is we also manage a portal of eBird called eBird Northwest. So that's the community science arm of Avian Knowledge Northwest. eBird Northwest, like a node of the Avian Knowledge Network, is simply an entryway into eBird. If you enter data through eBird Northwest, it's going in to the comprehensive eBird enterprise, but our content on eBird Northwest is tailored for our audiences and our partners. So let's talk about some tools. So we talked about data management. I'm going to talk a little bit about we're getting into the BLM relevant tool process. So one of the things we were able to do is work with Point Blue Conservation Science, American Bird Conservancy, and the North Pacific LCC to take data that had been collected in the Pacific Northwest over a 20-year period of time, federate all of those data into the Avian Knowledge Network so they could be analyzed together, and then develop an interactive climate vulnerability mapping tool, which allows you to look at conifer, grassland, oak, or riparian habitats, consider what the current abundance of those birds are, predicted abundance of the birds, and then based on various climate scenarios, consider what the future abundance of those birds and their associated habitats are predicted to be. We then developed an analysis through a tool called zonation that allowed you to combine the current and the future abundances of these different suites of birds to determine conservation priority hotspots for conifer, grassland, oak, woodland, and riparian birds. And that's what this tool does. It's available on Avian Knowledge Network. The analysis was published in Conservation Biology. It's important to us, and I think it's important to our partners, that the science be vetted that we're putting out there on the Avian Knowledge Network. So publication is always an important part of these of the tools that we're developing. And so here's some examples of some work that we did working with the National Park Service and the BLM using these distribution models. We wanted to look at a gap analysis of where birds were occurring on federal and non-federal lands. And then specifically, we wanted to compare on federal lands where birds were in our protected areas, our national parks and our monuments, versus our multiple use areas. And so in this analysis, we considered the Klamath-Siskiyou bioregion, which is inclusive of the Umpqua River, the Rogue River, and the entire Klamath Basin and Klamath River watershed. And then take a look at 6 park units and what was at this time the newly created Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument that's managed by Medford BLM. And what we asked several different questions was, using the density distribution models at a bioregional scale, where were these species distributed on federal lands and on protected and multiple use lands? We focused on 2 grassland species, including the Oregon Vesper Sparrow, which is a subspecies of the Vesper Sparrow that's been petitioned to be listed. It only occurs in patchy spots in Western Oregon. 4 oak woodland species and 8 coniferous forest species. Again, looking at a fine scaled gap analysis of federal versus non-federal, federally protected versus multiple use, and considering these areas. And what we learned from this analysis and this tool that's available online is that there's several at-risk habitats that we were interested in, specifically oak woodland and grasslands. And we wanted these at-risk habitats are at risk and identified as at risk by Partners in Flight at regional, national, and continental scales. And so we wanted to identify how well are these at-risk habitats protected in our protected areas network. And what we learned was that we were able to identify areas for future protection. So what we found was that out of all of the protected areas in this region, which did a really good job of protecting coniferous forest birds, that grasslands and oak woodlands, as represented here by the distribution of Vesper sparrows and white-breasted nuthatches, are better protected in the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument than in other protected areas within our region. However, we also learned that there's opportunities outside of the current boundaries at that time of the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument to do a better job of protecting these at-risk habitats. And so this information went into a multi-party process of thinking about where the monument was, and if there was ever an opportunity to expand this national monument, where we could identify areas for future protection. And excitingly, that did inform President Obama's boundary enlargement of the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument, which resulted in protecting even more of those grassland and oak woodland habitats in that monument. One of the things I'm excited to tell you about is another tool that we've developed. One of the things about data sharing levels is if you make your data more widely available, you attract more people to use the data. Klamath Bird Observatory, most of our data are available at a level of 3, which means they can be explored and seen, but then we request that data collaborators come to us and try and ask us for data access. Through that, we've developed an amazing partnership with Oregon State University and Matt Betts, and Kate Halstead, who's with us today, did her master's degree using data and using some new state-of-the-art and further developing some new state-of-the-art modeling approaches that we call species-centered habitat modeling. Gonna toot the horn a little bit here on Kate's master's work. Kate would just received for the paper that she published here in the bottom right-hand corner, using species-centered approach to predict bird community responses to habitat fragmentation. The International Association of Landscape Ecologists just awarded Kate and her co-authors Best Landscape Ecology Paper of the Year in 2020 for this paper. So it's really important that you all know that the science that you're supporting is really high quality science, and that you can stand behind it. So what these species-centered habitat maps do is the species-centered habitat modeling approach, it takes raw spectral Landsat imagery and uses raw spectral Landsat imagery as opposed to classified habitat data to create fine resolution distribution models using each of the different individual bands that come out of the Landsat imagery. In that set of papers, we've determined and tested that distribution models that are based on raw spectral imagery versus classified habitat data perform better with regards to being able to predict the occurrence of species across a landscape. So this was an improvement over more traditional approach distribution modeling, where you first distribute habitats and then use that classified habitat data to try to predict where birds are. We have higher predictive abilities. We get a wider temporal range of our predictive models because the data that come out of Landsat can be readily purposed annually to reproject distributions of birds. So not only can we, after disturbance or after management, reproject the distribution of birds, but we can also do chrono sequences and look back in time and ask, what did the distribution of birds, what might that have looked like 20, 30 years ago based on that data? And then one of the real things that we think is an improvement over distribution models that are based on classified habitat data is that we're eliminating errors in misclassification of habitat. We're letting the birds tell us where the habitat are, as opposed to a few individuals analyzing data. It also avoids omissions of fine-scaled features, different things that we might not be able to model or think about as humans trying to classify habitat data. And then also it avoids the missing of subtle changes in vegetation, either based on climatic conditions from one year to another, or slow processes of succession, or quick processes of disturbance. So what Kate did is she looked at several different oak woodland species and then used each individual distribution model for each individual oak woodland species to stack those to create, in this case, for the Rogue Basin or a portion of the Rogue Basin, a very fine resolution species-centered habitat map for oaks in general. So if we predict that 6 or 7 oak woodland species are occurring in a given place, we've got a pretty good idea of not only that that is an oak woodland, but based on the species composition, what that oak woodland looks like. And then, so this predicted species richness results in a species-centered model that we have greater statistical support that is actually accurate on the landscape for predicting not only whether those species occur there, but whether oak woodlands occur in these very diverse places. And Robin can attest that it's hard to find distribution models that can accurately tell us where oak woodlands are here in the Rogue Valley. And then species richness, what was really exciting is not only is this approach incredibly innovative, but this approach is also can be used to ask really important questions. And so what we asked was, how does species richness relate to patterns of patch size and fragmentation? And we learned that focal patch size decreased and patch number, that species richness decreased as a function of patch size and patch number, suggesting that increased fragmentation was not good for select species richness. So not just a naive species richness of how many species are out there, but we really wanted to ask the richness of oak woodland species specifically. And so that was really some of the innovation of this paper. We've used this distribution modeling approach right now in the Klamath-Siskiyou Oak Network Strategic Habitat Conservation Plan to look at where different oak woodland ecotypes, from an oak savanna to an oak woodland to a chaparral habitat to an oak conifer habitat, occurs throughout this region. So our conservation planning process could be very spatially explicit in identifying core areas for certain conservation values in the Klamath-Siskiyou bioregion. We also combine this information with some climate smart planning that I just showed you with the Pacific Northwest Climate Planning tool, and thinking about our focal species and our habitat objectives from the Oregon-Washington Partners in Flight Bird Conservation Plans. The reason we wanted to use these plans and connect these plans with the science is because these plans are designed to be very prescriptive in nature. So these plans are designed to be written not only by read by not only wildlife biologists, but also by conservation planners, by interdisciplinary teams and silviculturists, to understand what habitat objectives and how they relate with different potential silvicultural outcomes. So silviculturists can develop silvicultural prescriptions that meet bird conservation outcomes. So these tools that I just described to you that we have in the Pacific Northwest, folks that are working on sage grouse issues were interested, and the BLM and with Jeff Walsh's support, really wanted to see if we could test this species-centered habitat modeling approach in shrub, steppe, and grassland habitats. And so we went back to the Avian Knowledge Network. We went back to the different bird observatories. You can see here on the upper right is the range of the greater sage grouse. And all of those little black globules are different data that have been collected by different bird observatories. In the Northern Basin and Range ecoregion that covers portions of 5 states, we found 8 different studies, brought those data into the Avian Knowledge Network, nearly 4,000 points that were collected from 2000 to 2016. So taking science that was put into place for a certain reason and repurposing that science, homogenizing that science to ask broader new questions. With the applications that were developed through the Federal Avian Data Center, the bulk uploader, we were able to homogenize different data sets. Aaron Holmes's data set from his extensive PhD work and previous work in shrub steppe habitats of Oregon and other places, the Intermountain Bird Observatory's IMBCR efforts and IBO, Intermountain Bird Observatory's historic data, transform those data into a standard format and develop 21 species-centered distribution models across the Northern Basin and Range ecoregion, and then ask, were the packs, excuse me, these areas that were set aside under the existing sage grouse agreement, effective as serving as an umbrella to protect sagebrush species of concern? And what you can see is, excuse me, species that fall to the right of this red line are well protected in packs. The sage thrasher and the brewer sparrow, However, the sagebrush sparrow, if we're going to depend on sage grouse packs to protect habitats for all sagebrush birds, sagebrush sparrow might fall through the cracks. So again, a very relevant, we think BLM relevant application of data and tool that's in development for the BLM and other partners. The Borderlands Avian Data Center, I wanted to highlight some work that they've been doing with the BLM, the Desert Thrasher Working Group. It turns out that our standard monitoring methods for land birds don't necessarily always work with these species down in the arid Southwest. And so different kind of monitoring techniques and different monitoring designs need to be used to effectively collect data. And so the Desert Thrasher Working Group created this multi-partner project to address conservation challenges associated with these species in the Southwest, and established a standard protocol, including bird surveys that used an area search methodology, designing different plot sizes that could be surveyed during a specific rotation based off of protocols that were put into place by Point Blue Conservation Science, and also habitat evaluation approaches that are now all available for using these methodologies. Anybody can have access to the methods and the data entry frameworks and contribute to this data set. And then the data set can be shared with anybody depending on what the data owners and the collaboration wants. A few examples of the results of how this kind of work fueled by the Avian Knowledge Network technologies can help. Is that 900 plus plots were established. These hard to detect species, 195 detections of bendyers and over 650 detections of Leconte's thrashers were recorded, and then those analyses can also be done at relevant scales related to the methodologies and the plot size. These are surveys from 2018. You can see how it took on. In 2017, there was 3 states, and then they brought on 2 additional states, and the project continues into the future. So again, through a collaborative community built around the Borderlands node, this data center, this data project was able to come forth. Similar examples with the Rocky Mountain Data Center and the growth of IMBCR throughout the country because of the wonderful tools and applications that are developed by Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. And now online, the Federal Avian Data Center. As I mentioned, we have various data discovery tools. There is the Avian Knowledge Network data catalog that you can go in and search either geographically or by keyword. And there's also this tool that came out of the Federal Avian Data Center project that's been deployed across the entire country, which is our phenology tool. And the phenology tool allows you to select a specific area and then create a graph of that area that tells you the probability of occurrence and relative abundance of species over a 52-week annual period. And this is, we think, is a really good tool for some of the kind of planning that you might be needing to do, where you want to look at when disturbances might happen, if it's energy development, where the energy development might have greater or lesser impacts on certain species of conservation concern. So this is just a smorgasbord of kind of the different various applications of the Avian Knowledge Network. What we did as a part of our contract with you all for this training is we did an AKN training review. And again, thanks Kate Halstead for leading this. Just to let you know, on the Avian Knowledge Network site, there is a link to the existing tutorials and guidances that are available online there at Avian Knowledge Network. And what Kate did is she looked and created an inventory of all of the different kinds of training modules that are out there, from overviews like I just gave to modules that focus on data management solutions. How can you develop a project and enter data and analyze data into the Avian Knowledge Network? The various exploratory tools that are out there, both exploratory tools that are available in the analyst package, which is specific to your data sets or data sets you have access to some of these broader planning tools like the phonology tool I just showed you, observation maps, different downloaders, the data catalog, to some node specific features, such as using the Rocky Mountain Avian Data Center to get some information out of the IMBCR protocols and outputs that are relevant to your all's work. So we did this review, and then we did a little bit of a gap analysis. What are the needs out there? And what are some improvements that could be made? Some of the webinars don't have as good of audio as we'd like to see them. Maybe the explanations could be more clear, or one of the things we're really excited to work with you on could be applied to real case uses that are relevant to specific audiences, such as BLM biologists and their interdisciplinary teams. We can more effectively communicate the big picture and the purpose of the Avian Knowledge Network. Again, we've identified user-specific trainings as something that's really important, and more specific, explicit use cases. So this is where the next step of this project goes in. Now we're going to have a couple recordings of this that are available for everybody at the BLM to use. What we want to do is use this participatory action research approach. And what this does is it joins us together as a team. It's not us coming in and just asking what you need and then going away and developing something and giving it to you. It's us collaborating together, asking you, what can we do for you as the Avian Knowledge Network to improve our systems? What can we learn from you so we can better improve the systems? And how can we develop a utility, a set of outcomes that are beneficial both for the Avian Knowledge Network technicians and analysts and the BLM users together? So we want a degree of community control. We don't want this to be driven by the Avian Knowledge Network. We want it to be driven by the Avian Knowledge Network partnership, the developers and the users. We want there to be reciprocal production of knowledge. We want to learn from you so we can better provide services and customer support, and hopefully teach you all more about what the potential is. So together we can build on what we have at the Avian Knowledge Network and build that out to make the Avian Knowledge Network even better at meeting specific outcomes focused on our mission, which is to advance bird conservation through a network of avian knowledge, and your all's needs based on your multiple use mandate for natural resource management. So in order to do this, we need you. And so what that means is we're seeking, and as a part of our cooperative agreement, to work with some folks in the BLM at different levels. First of all, what data or project management tasks do you need assistance with that the Avian Knowledge Network might be able to provide? So I heard examples of people who are doing point counts and they'd like to use the Avian Knowledge Network to to enter, manage, QA, QC, and analyze their data. What are some data-driven questions that are really pressing right now that we could help answer with data-driven decision support tools, or existing or future, to help the BLM meet their challenges of the day and realize their conservation opportunities of the day? And so what decision support tools do you see that might be available in one place that you'd like to be available in another? Or are there just gaps in our decision support tools that we could develop for you all? So what we're hoping to do, and we don't expect to do this today, we expected that we were hoping that you guys maybe will go back and think about this, to develop a small focus group or a couple focus groups if we determine that's a better approach, to help you all build capacity for better using the Avian Knowledge Network at the resource level. So one of the things we've talked about is that if we can build the capacity at the state office level, that maybe that, and this is how the Fish and Wildlife Service is working right now, and that we're starting to work with DOD, the Department of Defense, on similar models. How can we build, and where are we best and most efficiently able to build capacities with within the BLM to better use the Avian Knowledge Network internally? And then how can we build out the Avian Knowledge Network or demonstrate existing tools within the Avian Knowledge Network to provide decision support and or data management focused outcomes to address specific needs either using existing tools or through future tool development. So that's kind of our next step. The future of AKN trainings could look like, really, we want BLM relevant trainings and use cases, either under the data management scenario. How can you use the data management solutions as a project leader to set up new projects, to data, enter, upload, and QA, QC your data, to summarize your data in meaningful ways that you can quickly plunk into your reports, and then download data to do more sophisticated analyses internally or with partners. And then what are some management specific questions that we can answer either with existing tools? What T&E species are present in a project area? What's the relative abundance of focal species at a given time of year using the phenology tool? And then thinking about richness and diversity questions based on existing IMBCR data that you could go in and explore at the route or district level, using the analyst applications and other tools, either both in the Point Blue Science Cloud and or in the Bird Conservancy cloud. So with that, that leaves us a little bit of time to talk about next step and to ask any questions that you might have. I'm gonna get out of my screen sharing. I forgot to take a breath and see if you guys could still hear me and whether you were awake or not. Because I get excited about this kind of stuff and just get talking. So I really appreciate your time and listening. Hopefully, I know it's a ton of information, but that gives you guys something to think about. Where do we want to drill in? Slow down and really think about certain aspects of what I just gave you as the whole kitchen sink with regards to better using the Avian Knowledge Network to meet your needs and address your challenges, and most importantly, realize your conservation opportunities.
Hey, John, before we get started, I think you're still on screen share. There you go. Okay.
So John, I'll kick this off with a question, and I was actually absorbing a lot more this time around, and thinking about some conversations that Elroy and I have had, and just wondering, do you know, is there a spatial limitation to how you are potentially pulling information out and analyzing that data?
Yes, and it depends on the tool. And we're trying to develop the tools. So for example, the phenology tool collects data and analyzes data at a scale that's somewhere between, and I'd need to go look at the methodologies in there, but somewhere between about a square mile or maybe even bigger, 10 square miles. So when you draw a polygon around a specific project area, you're getting an analysis that's at a much broader scale. Another example is we're working with the Forest Service right now, both the Klamath National Forest in the Klamath Mountains ecoregion and also with Southeast Forest Service, to take the species-centered distribution modeling that Kate was working on, to develop some tools that allows you to summarize those data at the watershed scale, at the section scale, or at the quarter section scale. And what we're trying to do is make it so people can't go in and try to click on a pixel and think that they're seeing something that's accurate at the pixel level. We are not comfortable providing answers from those species distribution models at anything smaller than the quarter section scale. So it really is about the metadata within the tool. Same goes for the climate modeling tool that's available now on Avian Knowledge Northwest, in that could only be as small as the climate data are made available. So we couldn't model any smaller than the PRISM data allows you to model. And still, we're not confident at the pixel level that that's an appropriate scale to be using those tools. So it really depends on the tool. Now, you can also go into the analyst, for example, and look at point count data to the point scale, right, or to the route scale, and actually do analyses that are much more finer scaled, that you could have confidence at that kind of management unit level, you know, with regards to, is this an actual count of birds, or is this a prediction of birds? So we're developing that species-centered habitat, the bird's eye view, the bird's eye habitat tool, I think is what we're calling it. And we're about to unveil that. That those are predictions, right? Those are estimates, not actually we found the bird in those locations, versus when you go in and start to use the data, the raw data, you're actually, yes, there was a bird there. So sometimes it's, when you're looking at a predictive models, one of your big concerns is this a false prediction that the bird is there? Versus when you're looking at point count data, is this a false prediction that the bird's not there? What's the probability that that bird was there and I didn't detect it? Those are always things that you're balancing anytime you're looking at either raw data or model data.
I would just add to, in case it's relevant, that I think also sort of depending on the tool and the data set, that there are some geographic limitations that just based on where we've received data. So the more that people use the AKN, get their data in, the wider the geography that's able to be covered by each of these tools. So tools like the phenology tool that is not necessarily geography specific is still constrained by what data have been pulled in.
Yeah, another great example of that is we've been working with timber companies in our area using these species-centered habitat models, and we need to caveat that we don't survey many timberland. You know, most of our surveys come from federal lands, so that's an assumption in our data set that we need to really caveat, that the data don't represent that management scenario as well as it represents multiple use management scenarios on federal lands.
I have another question. So if I mean, and we're not digging into the detail and getting into the weeds yet, but if we get to the point where you're, one is exploring the different data sets, if there are those caveats, are they, is there like little asterisks or something where you're kind of drawn to, read the fine print on this? There are limitations or there's a bias on how this data was collected?
That's a great question. And I think we need to continue to, that's an area that the Avian Knowledge Network needs to work on. So where we're really good right now in the Avian Knowledge Network is the domain, the variable and domain level metadata. This field represents a count within 50 meters. Or this field represents a detection type, and the 6 detection types are this, and this is what they mean. In the data catalog that I showed you very briefly, we are hoping that the data users, and we need to make this the responsibility of the data users or the data contributors, that they're providing that metadata. So I would like to believe that if you go find any data sets from the Avian Knowledge Network, from the Klamath Bird Observatory, that our metadata documentation in the data catalog is pretty thorough, and that we provide any publications that have been published using those data that present those caveats and things like that. But that really might be an area of exploration. What are some questions that land managers really want to know about the data that are being used? And one of them that I don't think is well represented is that scenario of our big point count data set better covers federal lands than it covers private timber companies. I don't know anywhere where that's necessarily documented, but that also becomes there's two things. I think the data owner needs to be responsible for putting an adequate amount of metadata out there about the data sets and the caveats. The data users need to do due diligence to understand the data that they're using to make sure that they're not pushing the data too far as well. So it's that could be, and I think we should mark that down as what are some gaps in our metadata with regards to, and let's use that example, the kinds of lands that have been sampled in our sampling design, or just the description of the sampling design alone. For some of the data sets, it's tough. Some of our data sets include projects that Robin and I and others started years ago, where we went and did a bunch of point counts up and down the Rogue River to ask a very specific question about some fuels treatments that were happening in riparian habitats. Those data are within the same data set of other projects that we did with the BLM, where we were doing more broader scaled sampling and things like that. So it's going to be tough to capture all of those metadata without digging into 25 years of annual reports and stuff like that. So that's a good challenge for us to keep in mind. Remember that project, Robin?
Yes, I do. Did you hear me?
I hear you.
Oh, good times for sure. And just, yeah, I really appreciate your presentation because just always get excited about it when you give your presentations. And there's just so many great opportunities for us that I know we are not tapping into. So I definitely want to share this with our other biologists and get the word out. So thanks
Great.
again.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions about the presentation before we kind of jump into, and I've got about 15 minutes. Next steps.
Hi, this is Noelle. I'm with the BLM in Southwest Idaho. I was just wondering, you mentioned something about being able to go back in time with bird distribution. Is that something that you feel you can do pretty accurately?
I'll answer that question and then let Kate fix me. So if you look at that Great Basin, I don't know if you're within the Great Northern Basin and Range ecoregion.
I think we're on the edge of it.
Right. So
on the other side of the river.
Right. So those data are available upon request. Those data have not been released publicly yet, but the BLM co-owns those with us. We've written a report about that. We have those data available. They were projected probably for 2019, maybe 2018, based on the data. So we use Landsat imagery for each year that was surveyed. We used the Landsat imagery from that year to build the models, and then we created that projection that we used in the paper that we're still working on about the sage grouse habitats and land bird protections under those for 2018. So in those models are as accurate as they are based on the model outputs. So the model outputs, we use an area under the curve measure to give us some sense of what's the likelihood that you're going to misplace a bird somewhere or that you're going to miss a bird somewhere. That's the model accuracy. As we track back in time then, so if I go back and take Landsat imagery from 20 years ago and reproject those birds, there's an assumption that bird habitat relationships are static over time, right? We don't necessarily know that that's completely true, but
right.
That would be an assumption. So the model would still be as accurate as the model is based on a set of assumptions. So we are going to be experimenting with that a little bit in the Southeast. We're going to be doing some trend analyses, looking at hopefully over time, trying to describe breeding bird survey trends by species-centered habitat configurations to see if we can explain some of the breeding bird survey trends in the Southeast based on breeding habitat, to tease apart species whose trends are being driven by issues outside of the breeding area versus the breeding area. So that's something that we can't just press a button and do. That would be a project that we would develop with you, and that would take some resources to get that done with those sage habitat data.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, and I'm pretty excited about your presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think Kate might have something to say, but I can say one thing we're really excited to do is backtrack, given climate change and fire suppression, distributions of oak woodlands decades ago versus what they look like now, both in their distribution and their condition. Kate, you got anything to add to my answer there?
No, I think that was quite accurate. And yeah, I think The big issue, one of the big issues with species distribution modeling is that stationarity assumption, which is what John was referring to, and that can be spatial as well as temporal. And I think that, you know, currently we're still even just getting a handle on the spatial stationarity of species and habitat relationships. So yeah, it's definitely a very fruitful area of further research. And again, another place where the more that folks like you are interested in being involved in the AKN, getting your data in, engaging with us on developing new tools, the effort like John was just talking about that we're undergoing with the Forest Service in the Southeast region, you know, that we work together to find funding to pull together these big data sets, create species distribution models, answer questions like this, the more we learn about these things. So it's just I think, a very good example of the power of the AKN to not only provide a great place for you to store your data and keep it safe over time, but to answer extremely important conservation and management relevant questions that are going to drive how we manage habitat and ecosystems well into the future.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I really hope so.
So I'm thinking, and Renee and Elroy, that the next steps is for you guys to kind of think about, you know, the data management questions versus the science delivery decision support questions. And let's come up with a small team that we can get together a couple times and get some use cases. And then my hope is that we'd actually take a project from different regions and say, here's a project challenge that we have. Either I think it was one of y'all, maybe it was Stephanie, that was collecting data. You know, what do I need to do to get my data in the Avian Knowledge Network, and how can I get it there and then summarize my data? Forgive me, Stephanie, if that was not you. Or is it, here's a project planning situation that I'm in, whether it be energy development or a timber harvest or a sage treatment, and how can we use these different tools to address the NEPA needs and other reporting requirements, and even carry it beyond that to identify conservation opportunities within the intention of the management action.
Yeah, for those of you who are on the call, this is a great opportunity to get some, you know, to have your project, any of the projects that you're working on, to tap into KBO, and just, you know, we can use your project as an example of how the functionality of how we can be tapping into AKN and be, you know, helping to inform our management decisions. And so you're kind of at the front edge of potentially being able to tap into some of these tools, and then, you know, brainstorm other utilities, other ways that we can, you know, either further develop AKN or, you know, tweak things so that they're more useful for BLM.
Yeah,
Elroy?
and also a few more modules of training that we could do that would be specific to addressing given the existing opportunities. I apologize. I'm going to let Kate stick around for the rest of the conversation. I do have to run right now to another meeting. Take a breath. Thank you all so much for the support. This is really my favorite part of what I do. So I'm going to leave without trying to destroy the entire Zoom meeting.
Thank you, John.
Kate, you got it from here?
Yep, I think I should be the host, so you're probably good.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank you, John. All right, looks like we're all still together. Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any suggestions to John's point there, it would be great to talk about it now, but if you would like to give it some thought, think about the data that you have, some questions that you might have, just poke around in the AKN a little bit more if you're not familiar with it, and just see what's in there. That's fine too.
I think I think one option would be, I guess, to kind of figure out how to, I guess, start off by connecting, I guess, all the different nodes under the AKN that would cross different field offices so that folks know where to go if it's within their region. I mean, I think that's one of the confusions of the different names of some of the nodes that I think it throws certain folks off. And so if we can figure out just that delivery of here's all of the AKN and nodes associated, you know, across
And like what the
BLM.
actual geographies are for each of them.
And then that might help. The other part is, I think if we have projects going on with like some of the states, I think the data gets in there, but we probably need to work internally to talk about if we're collecting data, bird data, where this is another place to store it. So I think it's just probably getting the word out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to, you know, if for anybody who's on this call, tell any of your fellow biologists that you cross paths with about this. We will, since it is recorded, I know it's, you know, we're in the middle of, or in the beginning of the field season. So I guess it depends on whether you're further south or further north, but hopefully folks can get a chance to take a look at this and digest it. And the great thing about the recording is that you can kind of rewind and like rewatch sections of it and potentially be playing around on AKN at the same time. And then hopefully we can reconvene at least internally within BLM and see if we can't identify some folks that are willing to be on a smaller team where we can develop some of these examples that would be really helpful for BLM on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be getting this video up, and it'll be on our YouTube channel, the KBO YouTube channel. So I will get a link to Renee and Elroy, and I'll send it to everyone who was invited, including folks who weren't able to make it, so that if people who you guys know might have been interested but weren't able to attend want to view the video, they can. Everyone else here can review it if you want to. And yeah, definitely let's all stay engaged with each other. And as you're doing that and have any thoughts, definitely keep in touch with Renee and Elroy about what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I guess one parting thought to throw out. I think I think from the population standpoint, or like some of the analysis, I think if it would be good to get information based upon how, like areas that we already are managing for. And so not necessarily where we are losing or where we have a conflict, but just looking at BLM and what's the contribution that those lands are providing for suites of birds, or those analysis. I know we're looking for new areas of conservation from the standpoint of protected areas, but I'm looking at it more from, we have to manage the habitat, whether it's in a protected area or not. So how to focus more at that level. And I think that would be helpful to the field office to understand that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, and that's probably something that we already have a good amount of data in that. I don't know if we could answer that question completely effectively nationally, but at least find a good area of coverage in our data sets for all of the different projects that have been input into the AKN, and even just have a little sub-region of BLM lands.
And if folks think of other questions later on, please send them to Elroy and myself, and we can make sure that we keep an ongoing list of questions, because I had questions as we're going through the talk and I thought, oh, so how would that be done? But I like to dive into the weeds right away. So sometimes with the overarching statements about what could be, you know, what a tool could do, I thought, well, I wonder how that plays out on the ground with specific scenarios. So potentially I can, you know, we can start summarizing some of these questions and wrap our heads around, you know, the context in which some of these tools are useful, and where we might come up with example projects.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and you are all welcome to do that same effort. And probably the more you can look at what's available already, the more, it will spark questions, connections to what you're doing, things that you would like to be examining in the future. So, and then there's always the possibility of seeing what's not there and letting us know, like, I see a real need here. There's something that BLM specifically is trying to accomplish at a particular level that can't be accomplished with what's available for the tools currently, and that's how these new ones get developed. So yeah, we're looking forward to your input.
All right, are there any other comments or questions? It's quiet. Well, thank you. Thank you all for participating. I know it's a tough time to squeeze a webinar in during the field season, but please spread the word, because I'll try to be a squeaky wheel about AKN since I came out of the field and I hadn't heard of AKN. So, definitely there's room for getting the word out a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. And thanks to everyone who's able to attend. We're really grateful to have had you, and yeah, look forward to hearing from you and working with you further.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, have a good one. Thank you.